Welcome back to the God Pill. This is it, guys. Part 4 of Kyojiro Kagenuma's essays on the female psychosis. The last one, where he puts it all together and breaks down the rationalization hamster. Let me first begin by saying that hunting down and reading the online materials regarding the various explanations of the rationalization hamster has been painstaking. However, many of the literature and commentary that I have read were indeed helpful, even when I do not agree with some of them. I am going to take the opportunity here to address some of the commentary that I find relevant as a starting point of the hamster discussion. The rationalization hamster is a combination of self-discrepancy, cognitive dissonance, and rationalization theories. Agreed. Yes, and my theories actually support these theories as much as these theories support mine. Read them to get a better perspective of the hamster. Kudos to Salt of the Red Pill, and vote this up if you remember. The hamster implies women are stupid. Not exactly. This one is taken from Kitty Hamilton, a blue pill woman, in the purple pill debate subreddit. If you read my article on solipsism, I explain the difference between stupidity and having a solipsistic view. My definition of the rationalization hamster implies that women are insane and infantile to varying degrees, and I have given evidence why I can sufficiently claim so. The hamster is a logic wheel. False. If you read my article on solipsism, you know why this is false. The hamster is not spurred on logic. It is driven by emotions and desires, thus are often irrational. The hamster appeals to your feelings, not your rationale. Men have the hamster too. Wrong. This myth is prevalent among blue pill and red pill women. The argument is that men rationalize their behavior as much as women. This is fucking bogus, and I'll tell you why. First, rationalization means giving excuses. This is what a child does, and we forgive children because they don't know any better. Women give excuses far too often, and they receive the pussy pass. But when men give excuses, we condemn him, as we should, for acting like a child. Men don't forgive other men for their excuses. We punish him when he's doing wrong. What men do is not rationalization, but justification. We give evidence to attempt, prove, and convince others that what we say, do, or think is right. Rationalization is pleading to another person's emotional sense, while justification is convincing another's intellectual sense. That's the difference. And if you see any man and woman making excuses for his or her actions without just cause, reprimand them and don't let them get away with it, or you'll just be enabling their behavior. Spearhead's article, Why the Rationalization Hamster is Right, recommended, is actually a good read, but I disagree on one point the writer, Ethic 2013, came to. He implied that the goal of arguing the hamster is to win. Understandable, but no. The goal is not to win against an opponent who will never admit defeat. The goal is to make them feel defeated. You can use the hamster to your advantage, in-game, whatever. This one is made by Veggie Girl in the Red Pill. Yeah, I don't care. Now that we have covered that, I will move on to explain what I believe the hamster really is. Now, I admit that as far as the theories and the series go, this one is the hardest to pin down, simply because there haven't been anyone who has really studied it. This is my attempt to investigate the hamster, but much like a black hole swimming in the ocean of the vast universe, you can only speculate with some approximation, and within a reasonable margin of error, the nature of the hamster in the subterranean and convoluted recesses of the female mind. I will admit that I might be entirely wrong in making a fool of myself, but I don't think I am. Regardless, I think this article is a good starting point to really understand what the hamster is, how it operates, why does it seem invincible, and how does it sustain itself, with the added bonus of some personal suggestions on how to fight it. The number of the beast. Let us recap. In parts 1, 2, and 3 of this series, I explained with evidence of apparent female psychosis. From there, we know that most, if not all, women are egocentric, narcissistic, and solipsistic to varying degrees, and these three mental conditions are related and support each other, as shown in the diagram above. The relationship between these three separate but similar mental conditions is crucial because it highlights the psychology of the female mind, and the rationalization hamster is born from that. So if you have not read the previous parts of the series, I suggest you do, or you will not be able to fully appreciate the nature of the hamster. So what definitions do we have when people talk about the hamster? One definition says that it is a tendency for a woman to use rationalization to resolve mental conflicts and avoid cognitive dissonance, the core mechanism that allows women to say one thing and do a different thing. This definition is too general and implies that men have the hamster too, which men do not. The problem with this definition is the core mechanism part of it. I explained in previous articles that women say and do different things because of the naturally occurring egocentric nature of relativistic hedonism, which is apparent in all children who have solipsistic views of the world. Also, this definition implies that the hamster rationalizes first, before the woman acts, and this is contradictory. If we look at how children behave, they will act first before thinking, and when they have committed a faux pas, they would then give excuses. Rationalization only comes after a misdeed, and not before, hence the above definition is inaccurate. The Private Man, 2011, probably offered the best explanation of the hamster. The rationalization hamster is an analogy for the thought processes used by women to turn bad behavior and bad decisions into acceptable ones to herself and her friends. When a woman makes a bad decision, the hamster spins in its wheel, the woman's thinking, and creates some type of acceptable reasons for that bad decision. The crazier the decisions, the faster the hamster must spin in order to successfully rationalize away the insanity. When the hamster rationalizes successfully, a woman can divorce herself from the consequences of her bad decision or behavior. My only criticism of this, however, is that it is an explanation of what the hamster does, not what it is. Despite that, Private Man has laid down some fine observations regarding the hamster. For one, he observed that the excuses become more incoherent when a woman could behave erratically. Thus, we can safely presuppose that the hamster is a product of a larger and systematic female psychosis. Second, Private Man observed that after the hamster successfully rationalizes a misdeed, the woman self-vindicates from the results of her actions. This statement here is key, and I agree with this observation, for it alludes to the core purpose of the hamster. You see, we know women are crazy and that they rationalize their madness, but we never ask why women act insane. We always assume that they were born that way, which is controversially true. But what need does a woman have to be mentally ill when we know that they are capable of critical and rational thought? This is a contradiction, and I believe all this goes back to the female psyche of egocentrism, narcissism, and solipsism. Hence, I have hypothesized that below is what the hamster really is. Please note that even though I tried my best to make it sensible, this is still a working model. If anyone would like to enhance this, be my guest. Note that I won't be covering the actual excuses the hamster gives. We have all heard them, and like what Private Man rightly observed, the end result is always, it's not my fault. What I would like to do is expand on the Private Man's observations. Schism. In part 1 of my series, I stated that for the egocentric, they can only see their point of view, and hence are often unable to accost or acquiesce with the facts of reality. And again, this is the key purpose of the hamster. The egocentric is unable to reconcile her own wants and desires with the truth of reality, and so she makes excuses for the purpose of escaping reality and retreating to the only place she knows to be safe for her, which is her own mind. What the rationalization hamster is all about is creating the illusion of a safe space for the woman. That is why women are solipsistic, because they feel safe in their own minds, where they do not ever doubt themselves. Women fear reality, and they build defenses and mechanisms to protect them from the harshness of the real world. Being unable to cope with real life, they would obviously feel ashamed of themselves, but they cannot handle shame because that would imply being worthless, which would cause them to doubt themselves, and so they rationalize their thoughts, speech, and behavior in an attempt to convince themselves that what they had done is justified for them. And if you look at my model, you will notice that I painted the center black. This represents the woman's insecurities. The woman's shame led to her narcissism. Her doubt for the world led to solipsism. And her fear for reality led to egocentrism. Women subconsciously realize that they are wrong because in the real world, dysfunctional behavior is unacceptable for adults, but they refuse to accept their own weaknesses. So instead of dealing with their insecurities like an adult should, they nurtured an extraordinary beast to protect them from those feelings of insecurity. The hamster's true purpose, then, is to protect the woman's insecurities from her fear of reality, from her own shame of her self-worth, and from the doubt that she has in her mind. The rationalization hamster is a sentinel of a woman's insecurities. And because a woman believes that only she is right, and thus reality is wrong, and she cannot cope with her own insecurities, she makes efforts to change reality to make it conform to her mental vision of a safe space in the real world. Feminism and gynocentrism is that vehicle for her to realize that fantasy, and to turn every place she inhabits into a safe space for her, even if it intrudes on others. Feminism here means woman only, or to put it solipsistically, the woman only, or I only. Gynocentrism here means for woman, or solipsistically, for the woman, or for me. How feminists were able to fool all women into participating in this facade is by using the hamster to appeal to other women's insecurities against a make-believe enemy that is vague, but at the same time readily identifiable, the patriarchy. The patriarchy is the illusion made to represent the real world, a world full of unsafe spaces for the woman, a world that would humiliate her and make her doubt her own worth and image. And why do this fear, doubt, and shame persist in the woman? It all goes back to part 2 of my series. I mentioned that men have good self-confidence and self-image because we evaluate our worth according to the work we do, and not how people perceive us. Men don't give a fuck about what people think of us as long as we enjoy what we do and are good at it. Women, because they are afraid of the real world, they fear being embarrassed and are fearful to admit that they are not all that they assume to be, found comfort and attention in the company of others and translated this as self-image and self-worth. Hence, they escaped the need to improve themselves. This means that the dysfunction and malfunction of woman will never be resolved. There is and always will be a disparity between the female safe space and the real world. That is why women continue to want for more stuff, resources, status, security, etc., because these things do not fix the real problem, which is for these very women to grow up. They need to fend for themselves, confront the hardships of the world, learn to be humble, and foster a strong, confident self-worth that is not tied with public perception. To do that, we men need to stop pandering to women and start making them compete, really compete, with us in the real world. We need to treat women like they are true competitive rivals. They need to work hard to get food, shelter, and the comforts of life that they all take for granted. Wake up. Now that we have identified the hamster, we can devise strategies to defeat it, and no, there is no polite way of doing it. The good news is MGTOW and herbivore men have correctly guessed how to defeat the hamster, and have taken the necessary steps. These are merely my suggestions on how to defeat the hamster, and though I have found that it worked for me, this is anecdotal, at best, and at worst isolated and circumstantial. Please consider first if it applies to your situation, and if it does not, abandon my suggestions. Form your own, and share with as many people as you can. In my previous 3 articles, you might have noticed I did not address how to deal with each mental condition. That is because the best times to deal with egocentrism, narcissism, and solipsism is when you are young. Since we are very late to the party, there was no point in me telling you how to deal with children's. In my previous 3 articles, you might have noticed that I did not address how to deal with each mental condition. That is because the best times to deal with egocentrism, narcissism, and solipsism is when you are young. Since we are very late to the party, there was no point in me telling you how to deal with the children's childish behavior. And since I had ample time to develop all 3 mental conditions, have consolidated into a tight mechanism. The hamster is superbly proficient in deflecting, defending, and retaliating against mental assaults. Reason and criticism, because all 3 aspects of egocentrism, narcissism, and solipsism are acting as a single unit, and its rationalization is supported by society in the form of feminism and gynocentrism, which include misandry and the pussy pass. So you cannot use a single strategy to defeat the hamster. It has to be a united and concerted siege campaign. If you look at the model, you can see that feminism does not contribute directly to any of the mental conditions. This is because feminism is simply a politicized manifestation of the female psychosis. It is a bigger version of the female psychosis that only contributes to the expansion of the female safe space with the help of gynocentrism. And gynocentrism feeds the hamster with narcissistic supply and the pussy pass. The female solipsism forms the basic tenets of feminism that in turn encourages society to be more gynocentric. Gynocentrism enables women's maladaptive patterns of behavior and cognition, thus allowing women's narcissism to exploit men, which is to serve feminism. So this reciprocity is analogous to the often irrational but highly effective female rationalization. You got to admit, this is some wicked-ass genius system the hamster's developed. I'm sure you already guessed what our strategy to defeat the hamster is, but let me just spell it out. Our first priority, which has been reiterated by MGTOW and is practiced by herbivore men, is to stop feeding the hamster and starve it, i.e., no more pussy pass, no more attention, no more pandering, and no more vagina for money. We need to stop being exploited by women, either for slave labor or as an emotional tampon. We need to cut off the narcissistic supply, just as the herbivore men did in Japan, and a woman will be concerned because they have just lost their meal ticket. The second strategy of our campaign, which MGTOWs have correctly applied, is a relentless assault on the beliefs held by feminism. What we want to do is give more men the red pill, because once they realize that they are being fooled, exploited, and used, they will stop adhering to gynocentrism, and thus stop feeding the hamster as well. Killing me softly. How do we do this to the individual woman? Well, firstly, no response is the best response. Do not pay them any more attention than they are due. Don't give them gifts, don't gossip with them, and don't flirt with them in life or on social media. Just don't. If you work with women, then just focus on the work and not on the woman. Then make the woman compete in the real world. Remember, you are designed as a human doing and are capable of fantastic feats that women find difficult to achieve. Don't waste your efforts by pandering to women and doing what they want you to do. Let them do it themselves and force them to work hard. Make them feel the pain of working the same amount of overtime that you are doing. I assure you that over a long period of time, she will wake up from that experience, and if she does not, then that is the kind of woman you do not want to be associated with anyways. You also need to start reprimanding women when you see them indulging in their depraved feministic beliefs. Remember, feminism encourages gynocentrism, and gynocentrism is the exploitation of you. So you do not want women to be spreading propaganda that would enslave you to them. Argue with them if they have a misandric idea and prove to them that they are wrong by using examples, logic, and reasoning. They will disagree with you, they are solipsistic after all, but the point is not to win the argument, the point is to humble them. Their hamster will start to spin the wheel violently to find the most absurd counter-argument that has nothing to do with the topic, ridicule and patronize them when they resort to this. You will know that you have gotten to them when they retreat from the argument and start resorting to cheap insults and sarcasm to try and shame you due to their arrogance and envy. Respond by pointing out their childish behavior. Remember to engage the fight in a calm and rational manner. Take the intellectual and rational high ground so that when they become irrational, you can display their melodramatic, erratic, and disturbing psychosis to the public. Pick your fights wisely. Do not engage in a fight without taking documented evidence, or she can claim sexual harassment. It is best to engage battles in public and record them so that you can disseminate the evidence for everyone to see. Always let women escalate the fight, but if it seems that the woman can actually engage in a meaningful discourse, respond in kind. Otherwise, make sure you expose woman's debauchery. The reason we are doing this is because we want to penetrate the hamster and target the woman's insecurities. That is the reason the hamster is running. To force the woman to confront her insecurities, she needs to be taught humility, make her feel ashamed of herself, make her doubt her own abilities, make her truly assess herself objectively, and make her grow up. Reward the woman if she succeeds in maturing, and battle her again if she regresses. Again, this is not a one-time event, it is a long, continuous siege campaign, so you really need to consider which fights you want to invest your time and effort in. Still, practice makes perfect, and at least in the beginning, especially in social media, you are going to need to engage in a lot of fights to learn what to say and how to say it. Lastly, I have to address Ori on engaging the feminazis. Don't. Not unless you have an elaborate, sure-winning strategy. But even then, you need to consider the cost and outcome. Feminazis are fanatic believers of feminism. They have conviction in their beliefs, and they won't change. What's worse, they are feminazis who are mature, working, rational, sensible, but are just discriminatory against men. Their hamster is not normal. It's a Frankenhamster, and I don't have a strategy on how to deal with those, unfortunately. I'll be sure to let you know if I come up with anything. If anyone has anything more to add, such as other strategies and tactics that they have seen or tried, I implore you to share them with everyone. I thank you in advance to everyone for reading this, and I hope you enjoyed this series. That concludes Kyo's essays on the female psychosis. If you've enjoyed them or my original content, make sure to like, share, subscribe, donate, and comment. Until next time, brothers, break those wheels.